I'm Nam Mylin. I'm from Vietnam. I was diagnosed with bone cancer when I was 10.
I'm Linh and Thanh Tam. I have diagnosed with cancer when I was 15 years old.
Hi, I am Willy. I was diagnosed with cancer when I was 5.
It's a parent's worst nightmare when a child is diagnosed with a deadly disease. Cancer in children is rare, but all the more unexpected and terrifying when it strikes. Today, on Cancer Warriors, we journey with young people from Southeast Asia who were struck with cancer when they were barely old enough to understand it, and the parents who stood behind them every step of the way. When Mylin was 10, she began feeling a severe pain in her leg that had her limping to school.
I felt a lot of pain in my leg, and the pain didn't go away after a few days, so I was limping to school. And at night, the pain was more terrible. Then my mother took me for an X-ray, and the doctor found out that there's a growth in the bone.
It was a bone cancer called osteosarcoma. While Mylin was too young to fully understand the diagnosis, her family was horrified.
Con bé mới có 10 tuổi, lúc đó mới 10 tuổi mà đã bị ung thư. Tôi thấy nó cũng kỳ. Tôi cảm thấy như là một cái gì mà nó sụp ở dưới chân tôi vậy đó. Tại vì khi mà nói tôi ung thư ai cũng nghĩ là chết hết. Thì tôi nghĩ là con bé này chết rồi.
Across Vietnam, another girl was suffering the same symptoms. 14-year-old Thanh Tam's leg pain had been dismissed by doctors as a minor ailment. But when it spread to her back, her mother took her to the hospital for answers.
Mới nói nhỏ này vậy, nó mới sinh thiết ra thì mới đầu nó sinh thiết, nó nói nhỏ này u lành. Cái 1 tháng sau sinh thiết lại nó thành u-A.
Thanh Tam was started on chemotherapy, but the doctors were not hopeful.
Rồi cái nó vô quá trị 2 lần là nhỏ này đi hết được luôn, chứ hồi đi xuống là còn đi được. Rồi bắt đầu là đi xe lăn không. Thì nó nói hết teo thì teo chứ nhưng mà chỗ đó là bó tay.
Terrified of losing their daughters to cancer, both mothers did their research and sought the advice of friends and family. The medical oncologist recommended to both was Dr. Ang Peng Thiam of Parkway Cancer Center in Singapore. The families flew to Singapore and saw Dr. Ang within a week of each other. For Mylin's mother, one of her biggest fears was that her daughter's leg would have to be amputated to save her life.
Tại vì một cái chân nó mọc lên một cái bướu thì làm sao mà sử dụng được cái chỗ xương nó nữa, mà một người mà cơ chân như vậy thành tàn tật rồi còn sao, nhất là con bé này con gái nữa. Tôi thấy rất là tội.
Dr. Ang consulted with an orthopedic specialist. They decided that the best chance of saving Mylin's leg was chemotherapy, which would shrink the tumor and limit the damage to her leg bone. Chemotherapy would also give Mylin something she urgently needed: time.
We wanted time to find an appropriate bone graft. In other words, this is actually bone that's taken from someone who has passed away. We get it from the bone bank to find a piece of bone that can fit nicely into this gap that's going to be created when we cut out the tumorous part of the bone.
As Mylin prepared for treatment, It was Tan Tam's turn to see Dr. Ang. Though both girls had the same type of bone cancer, Tan Tam's was more severe.
Osteogenic sarcomas are actually quite rare. And in the same month that Mylin came to see us, literally 1 week later, Doti Tan Tam came and saw us. And she was a very pitiful sight. She had already undergone, a few cycles of chemotherapy back in Vietnam. And she had a cancer which continued to grow despite the fact that she had gone on 2 cycles of chemotherapy.
Now 15 years old, Tan Tam's pain was so crippling that she was confined to a commode 24 hours a day, eating, bathing, and even sleeping while seated in it. The cause was an enormous tumor in her pelvis.
We realized that there was a very large tumor that had literally eaten up half the pelvis. The left leg was not moving anymore because the nerves had been destroyed. In this situation, really, to try to attempt surgery at that point would have been quite futile because the tumor was so large, there was a very, very high probability that there would be microscopic disease elsewhere. When you're staying here,
Though chemotherapy had failed her once, Dr. Ang believed that a more aggressive level of therapy could possibly shrink Tan Tam's tumor and give her some relief. Left with few options, Tan Tam and her mother agreed to give chemotherapy a second chance. After the break, the pain and fear of cancer would lead to a friendship that saw them through the difficult days of treatment. And later, a father learns that his 5-year-old son has only months left to live.